I'm going to start out here with Ron Dean, Natural Resources Director, Office of Senator Orrin Hatch. He's stationed here in the state. And a personal thank you to my good friend Brian Steed, Chief of Staff for the Office of Congressman Chris Stewart. Brian is up to his eyeballs in stuff going on in Washington, D.C., and I appreciate him taking the time out of his busy schedule and coming out here to be part of this. This is the reason that he traveled to the state of Utah, was to be here with you guys today. And I applaud both of these elected officials' offices, and they have great staff, all of them do. Thank you.
Brian and I both agreed that we'd be glad to yield some time back to Randy if he had some more he needed to say. So, like to bring greetings from Senator Hatch. He wishes he could be here. We're getting ready to, as you go out to herd your livestock, he's going to be herding congressional cats related to a new Supreme Court nomination that could be coming forward that could be very catastrophic in the way that the Supreme Court rules related to law that it could affect and will affect all our lives. First off, there's a lot of congressional staff here besides Brian and myself. If we could have them stand.
Thank you. I was just writing them down.
I got light in my eyes here. If we could start here with Ryan and Donna, could you loudly introduce yourself and let us all know what office you work for, what member you work for, and what office you work in?
Senator Mike Lee, and I am Natural Resources for Utah.
Donna Sackett, I'm in the Salt Lake office doing constituent casework and public lands issues.
For Senator Lee, right?
For Senator Lee, yes.
Jerry McLaren, Congresswoman, Nita Loves, District Office here for Utah, Natural Resources. Cam Madsen, I'm with Congressman Stewart's office, I'm in the DC office. Gary Webster, I'm with Congressman Stewart, District Director of Salt Lake office.
Courtney Kirkhoff, I'm the Senator Hatch's office down in Casework.
Very good. Thank you.
Garrett, and I'm with Congressman Jacob's office, I'm the District Director of the Patrol office, but I live in Beefight, so I don't live in Beefight.
Very good. Thank you. These staffers are fairly integral to what we're going to talk about here today. And I think what Randy wanted us to talk about is how essentially can Congress, both in D.C. and locally here in our Utah offices, be of assistance to you as you interface with and have problems and disagreements with federal government land management agencies. And so I think that there's essentially two different kinds of operations. A local operation in a congressional office is substantially different than the D.C. operation in Congress. And so let's start with local folks. I think everybody that introduced themselves here are local except Brian and Cam. Okay, everybody else, although they'd be willing to help you too, just because. Is Casey here? I've seen him, but okay, Casey Snyder is here, works for Congressman Bishop. So if he pops in, have him wave hard. It's hard to see up here, but locally, let's say for instance you have a disagreement with something related to your grazing allotment. Had a conversation with a gentleman at lunchtime. I can't remember his name. Dang it! It's a senior moment, but and told him, and he seemed a little bit surprised that if you have a disagreement related to your individual grazing allotment, you can call a congressional office, and we can interface with that land management agency, whether it be the Forest Service or the BLM, related to that situational disagreement. We can even go out on the ground and look at the situation, and in some sense ride herd on the land management agency to make sure that they're following their own law, their own rules and regulations related to your situation, and we're glad to do that. And so as this conference moves forward, feel free to interface with any of these congressional staffers, get their contact information. All of us would be glad to help you in any way that we can. I'd like to say that all those opportunities that we have to interface with land management agency personnel turn out for the constituents best. They don't always turn out that way, but frankly, a lot of them do. A lot of times we're able to make that difference that you need. And I know there's a lot of different personalities that you deal with in the land management agency. Just like any bureaucracy, you're going to have a large number of folks that are well-meaning, that want to do their job, their heart's in the right place, and you're going to have a couple that are cantankerous, want to make your life rough. I had an experience, not with a land management agency, here this last week. I was doing a building project on my home, and went to get, the building inspector had come to the house and said, A, B, C, and D is wrong with your framing. Can you get that squared away, and I'll come back and look at it. So it entailed me going to a fastener place and getting some various fasteners to use in this construction. And at the counter, when I checked out, I bought my stuff and just made a comment to the clerk, just trying to keep the building inspector happy. That's what I said to him. His response, he asked me, "Where are you building?" I told him. He said, "Well, you shouldn't have any trouble in that community. I'll tell you, there are some places that are really, really hard-nosed." He said, "I had a builder in here the other day that he had made one stair tread 1/8 of an inch too wide, and the building inspector made him rip out the whole stairwell and redo it for a 1/8 inch of a stair tread." And I was even kind of shocked at that, even after all the agencies I've dealt with over the years. But I think that kind of personifies the fact that you're going to have a lot of personalities in these land management agencies. Some of them are easier to deal with than others. Some of them are a joy to deal with sometimes, and some of them aren't going to be so helpful. But we'll be glad to help you in those situations if you need that help. In the D.C. office, they do legislation. They do hearings and can call hearings related to problems that constituents are having with federal agencies. In our congressional delegation, we're very well positioned, if you will, to do a lot of these kinds of inquiries into these kind of problems. In the Senate, Senator Lee sits on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee that has direct jurisdiction over the kind of things we're talking about at this conference. And so as a member of that committee, he has every right to make committee inquiries into these kind of issues. Congressman Stewart sits on the Appropriations Committee. Congressman Chaffetz is on the House Oversight Committee. So his jurisdiction related to federal agency malfeasance almost is without limit. He really can go into almost any agency and make inquiries related to how they operate. Congressman Bishop is chairman of the House Natural Resources Committee, and so has a wide range of jurisdiction related to things, public lands that he can deal with. So if you feel free to contact us DC-wise or locally. If we can't solve it on a local level with the interface locally with the land management agency, and it's a bigger problem than that, something that we perceive as being dictated to the local federal agency employee by someone up the line, then we pass that on to our DC office, and and they're able to inquire into that. Make phone calls, have meetings, and inquire that way, or make formal inquiries a la a congressional committee hearing. So, I can tell you some of the things related to grazing that we're working on jointly, Senate and House. Randy mentioned the Grand Staircase Grazing Bill. Essentially, when President Clinton in 1996 stood on the edge of the Grand Canyon, designated the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, he made the proclamation. We didn't want it in the first place, just so you know. We weren't happy about it. But he made that designation. In the proclamation that designated the Grand Staircase, he said that, among other things, that grazing would be grandfathered, would continue at historical levels. And we know that hasn't happened. So this bill essentially says, you gave us a monument we didn't want, but since you gave it to us, we're going to hold you to the bargain that you made with us. And so it, in essence, tells the BLM you will manage the range for the historical numbers to make sure that those numbers come back up to what they were historically. We really felt like we shouldn't have to do that, that the administration knew that was the benefit of the bargain they made, and they're taking all the benefit, and we want the benefit that was promised to our grazers. So we have a state grazing authority bill. Essentially, Randy alluded to the idea of the state taking jurisdiction over public lands. How much better off the land would be managed is the feeling. Some people are trying to do that in one fell swoop. They're going to go, apparently the state is going to file a lawsuit and settle this thing once and for all, if you will. We're trying to do some things piecemeal that would show both the general public, members of Congress in the East, and those who care about these kind of issues, that the state really can do it better. So the State Grazing Authority Bill allows the governor to select 2 grazing allotments at a time that the state would manage instead of the federal land management agency, whether that be BLM and Forest Service, which we think would give us the opportunity to gather the data to show that the allotment was managed better under state control than it was under federal control. A couple of other small things. One of the problems we have is with the National Environmental Policy Act. Everybody knows when it's time to re-up on your grazing allotment, you get NEPA, and that becomes one of the big hurdles that land management agencies either can use or they want to approve certain things, but they have NEPA hurdles that they have to jump over. This mule deer and sage-grouse habitat bill allows the federal land management agencies to use what's called a categorical exclusion to improve habitat without going through a NEPA process, essentially. We've got wild horse and burro legislation. Greg Sheehan alluded to that. I think you all know how the horse and burro populations are tearing up the range. This wild horse and burro legislation would push jurisdiction for managing those herds down to the state as well. And of course, you're aware of Congressman Bishop's PLI. I don't know what that was, but I probably broke it. I can say that for the most part, these things are really ballot box problems. Senator Hatch, and I know the whole delegation, I know Senator Hatch is working really hard to make sure that nationwide we elect the kind of people that will back us up on these kind of things. To date, last number I had heard, he had raised over $23 million to try and keep and enhance a majority in the Senate that will at some point, we hope, have the fortitude and the understanding to modify some of these laws that cause us so much grief. The Endangered Species Act, NEPA, FLTMA in some instances, wild horse and burros, Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, they all just really bite us out here in the West and need to be dealt with. Now, the second part of this presentation is what can you do? How am I doing for time, Brian? My timer shut down on me here.
Take as much time as you want. This is great.
Brian's actually got a PowerPoint, so he won't put you to sleep like I'm doing. So, what can you do? I know in some ways you try and do this, but I think we as congressional operatives, Farm Bureau, individual ag producers need to do a better job at educating people related to what you do and how valuable it is. I was going on a hike, and at the trailhead there was a young lady who had set up a table extolling the virtues of wind and solar power, and I've, in their proper place, I've got nothing against wind and solar power. I think they can be beneficial used correctly. But she was at the same table. She was, talking about the evils of carbon-based energy, and so I just engaged her in a conversation. I assumed that she was going to stay there all day. It looked by her sunburn that she had been there most of the day already, and obviously had a lot of passion about the issue that she was talking about. So I asked her, I said, I'm not opposed to wind or solar, but what do you do about the baseload problems if you do away with carbon-based energy and you're only doing wind and solar? How do you deal with your baseload problems that creates? And her response was, what's baseload? And I think we see that a lot when we're talking about natural resources. People put gas in their Subaru and drive to the protest rally to protest drilling and oil production. They eat steak and eggs for breakfast and then go protest your grazing allotment. We all know groceries come from meat comes from the meat counter at the grocery store. I mean, there's just a lot of both ignorance, and I'll admit I'm ignorant to some things, so I'm not trying to be dismissive, but there's a lot of ignorance out there related to people's food sources and how disconnected they've become from their food source. My wife talks about what it was like to raise her 4-H steer, and then when it was all said and done, realizing that now we're eating it. She said, at some point in her little life that caused her some consternation, but she came to grips with it eventually. So you need to gather data. Your county management plan documents are an excellent way to start doing that in an organized fashion, in a way that the counties can use that to hold accountable the federal land management agencies and make them operate in the way that FLTMA tells them they have to. Randy alluded to that in his presentation. Also, understand the rules that you're operating by. I think a lot of times we take it for granted that the people that we're dealing with in federal agencies are operating according to the rule book, when in fact in many cases they are not. So if you're familiar with the rule book, and I know that takes a lot of time away from, like, you're not busy enough already, you're not working hard enough already, but come to some understanding of what's in those rules and regs so that you can start to recognize when somebody's off track. After that, collaborate, organize better, be more involved in your cattlemen's associations, in your wool growers associations, with the Farm Bureau, with the people that advocate on your behalf. Collaborate with them both politically and strategically. I can tell you that if you organize politically, that helps keep your elected officials, both state and federal, involved and interested in your situations. Cooperate. build the best relationships that you can with the federal land management agencies and their staff. Cooperate with them to the extent possible that you can and still maintain your interest. And finally, you have the opportunity to litigate. There's a reason why we have a court system in this state and in this country. Litigate when it's appropriate. It shouldn't be your first, shouldn't just jump right out of the gate and litigate, but use that when it's appropriate. Closing, I want to acknowledge that I think we, as a congressional delegation and as congressional staff, understand to a large degree the difficulty of the problems that you face. I can tell you to a person, our congressional delegation wants to make this kind of thing better for the ranchers and the wool growers and the people that build their rural economies off the land. We want to help you in any way we can, and we want to hear you out. So make sure you get our contact information. Feel free to interface with us at any time regarding issues that you're having. We'll do our best to assist. So thank you.